Hey y'all, this is Amy Green with Amy and Art Designs, and today we're going to make really cute fall wall decor with the pumpkin plaque that I found at Dollar Tree. I cannot wait to craft with you, so let's get started. Hey, this is Amy Green with Amy and Art Designs, and today I'm really excited to show you how we're going to make, take this Dollar Tree pumpkin and turn it into a really fun Thanksgiving or fall sign. Let me show you what we're going to use today. We've got this. So I cut this out of my laser gather to fit on here. I looked for words at Dollar Tree when I was there, but I didn't find any that fit the pumpkin. So I made this myself. If you want to use this same word as me to make this, I'll put a link to that in the description below. I'm going to use this vintage blue paint, some vintage white. I'll tell you, I was against the blue for fall until I started using it, and I'm kind of hooked. I'm going to use some wood beads. I'm going to show you how to paint those easily. We're going to replace this jute twine, so I've got that. I'm going to need some glue. And to paint this, I am just going to use paint dauber, this little round paint dauber on a stick, and some makeup sponges. So let's get started. Let's start with this. This was cut in my laser, and anything cut in a laser generally is covered with low tack masking tape. So, and when you get this, you just pull it off, okay? I'm using a plastic razor to remove it, but you could use a credit card. You could use a library card. Probably don't want to use your credit card. An old credit card, a library. You probably don't even want to use an old credit card. You could use like a Walgreens card. You know what I'm talking about? Those rewards cards. You get like 7 of them when you sign up or whatever it is, and you only use one on your keychain. You could use that. This though I got from Amazon. I really do love it for removing this. There's also some tools at the Dollar Tree that I know people have been successful with, but you just kind of peel it off. No big deal. All right, so we're going to set this aside, and we are going to start painting our pumpkin. I'm going to remove this, so I'm not going to reuse this. But if you did want to reuse these, because they all come with these little, you could just pull it off the back like that. I have already sanded this. I just used 320 grit. Big fan of 320 grit paper. I'm going to put this down to protect my surface. And then we're just going to paint it with a vintage blue. Or I'm going to paint it antique white. So this is FolkArt vintage white, not antique white. You could go with a white or a cream. I mean, more creamy or a whiter. I mean, but I wanted something just a little less white, but I didn't want it to be brown. So, like, I didn't want tan. So, this is what I came up with. So, when you're painting this, if you get too much paint like I did right there, you can just take the end of this and wipe it right out. You want enough paint to cover it, but not so much paint that you're sloppy. So, and I don't paint the back, but we're just gonna, these makeup sponges make it really easy to quickly cover your surface without having lots of brush strokes to sand out later, in case, because that can be a problem when you're painting wood, is ending up with lots of brush strokes. So I'm going to speed this up for you just a little bit. The important thing to know is that I ended up putting 2 coats of this vintage white paint on here to get a really nice solid color across the whole pumpkin. Hang on though, because later on I'm going to show you how we're going to distress this and make it look really old, and I cannot wait to show you that part. Okay, so I don't know if you can see this, but behind here there's a wood slat where you glue everything together. And you can see like a bead. I mean, it's from the Dollar Tree, right? There's a bead of like hot glue or something that goes in the middle. And I just took my brush and kind of painted that because I didn't like the way that it looked. So I'm mean, that's up to you. If you want to leave it natural, you can. If you feel like you need to paint it, you can. And it does, I mean, for the most part, the glue looks covered. And I think once we get this on top, right, it'll look great. It just covers that up so you don't have that natural wood popping up at you, right? And I'm just going to go back and clean it up like I did before. Okay, so... okay. And then I'm going to try this with my heat gun. I have not sanded this. Obviously, because you saw me took the tape off, and it's in pretty good shape. I'm not going to sand it right now. I'm going to see what happens after I put a coat of paint on it. And we'll go from there. So this little trick here, I learned on TikTok. I have no idea. I can't remember who I saw doing it. But painting laser cut words can be tricky. Because your brush gets in all the places where you don't want it to get. And it just doesn't look as good when you're done. Yeah, this is going to be sanded. So, but see how nice and clean that is all the way around. You get it doesn't slop it all over the place, which is what you want, and which is why I am kind of hooked on these paint daubers now. Before, I would have been using a brush, but I'm pretty hooked on these. You just don't want so much paint that it gushes out over the edges, okay? That's the trick. So, like you see me tapping it off over here. I dip it in the paint, tap it off, okay? And then I come back and get and you just push. If you swipe, it's going to change. Meaning that it's going to change the application and it's going to get down the edges. But if you tap and you don't have a lot of paint, if I just take a whole glob of paint, then yeah, it's gonna be a hot mess in there. But this is really simple, and it just is quick, and it looks great. Okay. Okay. Oh, look what I did there. I got my, there we go. Okay. This is going to need another coat once it dries, but it's so quick, doesn't matter. So we're going to set this one to the side. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to paint our beads. So I am going to use 6 beads on this. So I'm just going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 6. And put them in my cup. Okay. I'm going to put a small amount of this blue paint right into the cup. Don't want a lot, just a little. There we go. And then I'm going to hit it with my water mister. I'm going to add one more bead because one of those has like a ding in the edge. Okay. And the reason you want the water is so that the paint isn't as thick and it covers your beads really well. If your paint is too thick, it's sloppy when on the beads. It's like all, oh, what's the right word? It's just like too thick, and it doesn't look like, you don't get a nice finish. So then we're going to dump them on our plate, okay? So you could stop there, but my personal opinion is after you do that, you get that done really quickly, right? And then then what we're going to do next is just get a nice firm flat brush like this. And we're going to pick up some of our beads. This is a cuticle stick. It works great. You can also use a thin paintbrush, all right? So, and all I'm going to do is even out my paint a little bit. And the reason I'm doing this is because this is personal preference, okay? You could probably leave it like this. But this is just a super quick way to even out that paint, and you're going to get a better finished look on your beads, and it's going to look more professional, if you will, less hand painted and more it's going to be smooth. That's sometimes thinking and working and thinking it, talking and thinking at the same time. But see, it's nice and smooth, and that's all I'm going to do. It's just very, very quick, okay? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I just want the paint smooth on the beads. If I feel like there's a bare spot, you can always shove your brush back in the paint and put it on there. No big deal, right? So, and you just want to do this for all of your beads. And see, like right here, this is what I mean. I don't even know if you can see this. Like right here, it just looks thick and uneven, the paint. And if it dries that way, it's going to look thick and uneven. And you don't want that. You want your beads to look beautiful. And you don't want them to detract. You don't want someone to look at your sign and say, oh my gosh, your sign's so great, but your beads are sloppy. You don't want that. So, but this is so much quicker than having to like sit here and hand paint every stinking bead, y'all. Like, you don't want to do that. Okay, so this is my trick for like keeping my brushes without soaking them with paint, water, in water right now when I don't need to. I use baby wipes for a lot of things. But for this is my trick. And then this way, if I need to go back and touch those up, I have my brush here. It's not soaked in water, but it's not going to dry out and ruin my brush. All right, so I'm muting this part and speeding it up, mostly to save your ears because the sandpaper makes a very loud noise on camera. Right now, I want you to pay attention to where I'm sanding, which is mostly around the edges. If your pumpkin feels really rough in the middle, you can go ahead and take your sandpaper across that very lightly. Take that 320 grit really, really easily. The 320 grit does not take off a lot of paint, which is why I like to use it. It just takes off a very thin layer. And that's what we're going for. We're just adding some light distressing with our sandpaper. And then we're going to go back later on and add even more distressing. And I'll show you that soon. Okay, so this is sanded. I've sanded it off. It's kind of hard to tell because of the white, and the wood is so light, but around the edges, it's a little worn, and it's kind of what I was going for. So this has been sanded down, and now we're gonna do the same thing to our word. The one thing I want to tell you is when you're sanding these wood words, you want to be gentle and you want to hold the wood down because you do not want to accidentally bust your word. You can generally glue them back together and patch it up, but it's unnecessary work, right? All right, guys, I'm going to mute the rest and speed it up because it is really loud. But what I want you to know is I'm just sanding around the edges of the word and taking off the paint just around the edges and the sides. And I haven't done it everywhere. So you're just kind of picking and choosing where you want that paint to come off and where you want the wood to show through. Okay, so that is just about where I want it. So let's look at this and put this on here. That looks really good, right? Yep. All right, we like that. So now what we want to do is we are going to take a clean makeup sponge and we're going to cut it in half. And we are going to take a tiny, tiny dot. I'm just turning my plate, guys. Of this. Because this is the Decor Wax, the home Decor Wax. And this is just going to help us give it a little bit of aging. And a little bit goes a long way of this stuff. So, and I just kind of go along the edge and then I take this and rub it in, okay? And I didn't want it right there. I got a little crazy, so let's just... So right there, see, I cleaned it up. Can't tell. So we just want to get a tiny bit of Decor Wax and go along the edge. And then we can wipe it and rub it in a little bit to make it. And this is just going to give us a little bit of an aged look. It's going to make each piece unique. So if you get it somewhere and you're like, it's a little too much for me, it's a little too dark, you can just take your sandpaper right over it and it cleans it up. So, but you just, this stuff, a little of this goes a really long way. Okay, so I'm liking this. Okay, gonna clean it up again. And now it just has a little bit of an aged look. So that is, and then this is gonna go there. So before I do that though, I want to clean my area again. So this is great for making sure this tack cloth, you get all that up. So now what we're going to do is we are going to paint this DuraClear Matte Varnish on here because it just puts a really great clear coat on top of your work. And it, let's use this one. I kind of like to use a straight brush, but it's really, it goes on nice and easy. I've got something right there. Okay, so it really kind of makes sure your work pop. And so if you, I know I use the Dobber for the paint, but for this, I just brush it on quickly. And if it gets in a corner, you can just take your brush and clean it up. And this is why I cleaned the dust off my surface too, because I don't want to paint any paint dust. I don't want that to get into my varnish, okay? All right, so we're going to finish sealing our word, and then we're going to seal our pumpkin. You just want to make sure you've gotten all the areas and you have nothing tucked up in a corner, or you don't have a glob of that sealer somewhere. And once you're finished sealing your word, you're going to move on to your pumpkin. The thing I want to tell you about the pumpkin is to make sure that you're brushing up and down when you're finished. Now you might go at a curve around the bottom to make sure you get it, but after you get that on there, go back and go up and down or go in one direction so that your sealer doesn't have brush marks in multiple directions on your finished product. We finished painting our pumpkin and we've sealed that and it's looking really good. The dimension and the interest, the visual interest that that little bit of Decor Wax adds is just really wonderful. And so this is painted also, okay? So now we're gonna seal our beads. And the same, it's just the exact same process we did when we cleaned them up. We're just gonna go like this quickly. It's all we really need, around, around, around. And then let them dry, okay? And that's all it takes to seal them. You can leave them unsealed, but here's my feeling about the beads. If you leave them unsealed, it's not going to be the same intense blue. See the differences in the blues? So this is my sealed bead. This is my unsealed bead. And we sealed our word on our sign. It doesn't take very long to seal 6 beads. And my thinking is that the beads are the part that people generally touch. If they don't necessarily touch the whole sign, but if they're going to touch something, they touch the beads. And I just think it's nice to protect your beads. All right, so now we're going to glue this on to here. I'm going to use my Gorilla Glue spray adhesive. I like this because, especially for words, it makes it so easy to spray the word, put it on there, get some weight on it, and it adheres and it stays really well. And it's so much quicker than having to paint the whole back of the thing with glue. So I put this in the back of an empty box and spray it. I don't film it for obvious reasons, but you just want to get enough on there so it's covered. I'm just eyeballing this. So, and if that looks really good, I'm going to push it. So the thing about this is you want to get some weight on it, okay? Because you want it to, so I just put some heavy stuff on it. You move it to the side and let it dry. We're gonna get our jute out now and start thinking about our beads. So there's a few ways you can do this. My personal favorite is a yarn needle and pliers, okay? So it just makes it a whole lot easier to get your beads through, or your twine through the hole. I've seen people like do tape, and I don't know, I mean, nothing against the tape, but I just prefer not to have to mess with it, honestly. This is just so simple. They're cheap. Your needles are so cheap. They're very inexpensive. So, and see how quick that is. I mean, we're just gonna thread them through. I'm gonna thread all 6 to start with. Let's see, that's the one with the ding in it. So we're gonna take these 2. And see how good our beads look now that they have that like extra layer of the DuraClear. So I've got all 6 of my beads on here, okay? Okay, so my word is on here. It's looking great. My beads are here. And now we just have to tie it on. So let's see, does this go through here? It's not gonna go through here. So we are just gonna take the needle off, poke it through. Okay. I want the beads to not come down on my sign. So there are a couple ways to do that. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my string, let's see. I'm gonna put it back through my needle. I'm gonna wrap it around this, okay? And then I'm gonna go up through the middle. I'm gonna make a knot that way, all right? And then I'm gonna use my needle to go back up through my beads, my bottom 2, and I'm gonna pull it really tight, and I'm going to cut it right there. So you're not gonna be able, well, there. And then this comes down. All right, and then we're gonna do the same thing on the other side because I just want to hide the knot. All right, I'm gonna talk you through this again, just in case you didn't catch it the first time. You're just gonna eyeball the length of your string, poke it through the hole, and then thread that yarn. I just think it's easier to use the yarn needle to make this type of knot. And you're gonna wrap your, once you get it through there, your string through the hole, you're going to wrap it around the string. And then you're going to poke your string up through the bottom of that loop and pull it really tight. And it just makes a really nice knot. So the next step and the final step is to cut that string as close as you can to the top of that knot so that your beads sit nice and even on top of your sign. Here it is, the finished sign. I love how this turned out, and it just started with a really inexpensive plaque from the Dollar Tree. So I'm Amy Green with Amy and Art Designs. Thanks for hanging out with me. I cannot wait to craft with you again. If you watched all the way to the end, drop a pumpkin in the comments to let me know, and let me know what you want to see next. I've heard from some of you, and so I've got some stuff planned for you, but you giving me some feedback always helps because I'm here for you to help you along your crafting journey.